We've arrived at day 8 of the Magnolia High School PSAT 10-day challenge. We're fast approaching the PSAT test, so those of you that are signed up to take it, please remember to be checking for information either through emails, through some kind of remind, or from your teachers or posted in the library as to where your room assignments might be for that day. So today we're going to continue with some more information about finding success on the PSAT reading and writing test, and today we'll look at some more specific passages. So the specific kinds of questions we'll be looking at today are loosely called connections questions. These are questions you might encounter on the test that deal with cause and effect, comparison and contrast, as well as sequence. Another thing we'll look at is while the SAT does test differently than it has in the past for vocabulary, there certainly is vocabulary that's tested, and that vocabulary largely appears in context. So we'll teach you a quick 3-step process for understanding how to find out the answer for a vocabulary and context question. All right, let's take a start by looking at the connections type of questions. And you see the QR code on the screen now. If you want to click into that, what you'll do is I'll show you in the browser what it looks like, but you'll see a series of information and then some practice with working with connections type questions on the reading passages. All right, let's look at these connection type questions. So before we kind of get into those a little bit, remember that there are 2 kinds of connection questions. One of them will be what we call explicit connections as opposed to implicit. And let's look at these 2 kinds and what you might find. So for example, for the explicit types of questions, you're going to get cause and effects type of questions where you're asked to identify an action or a condition that results in some kind of predictable occurrence. You can identify these cause and effect relationships by looking for keywords such as this is caused by, or this is the result of, or this is because, or a word like therefore. Another type of question you might see is a comparison contrast. And in these connections, what they are asking you to do is to highlight some of the differences as well as similarities between 2 items. So you're going to compare and contrast. The keywords that you'll find in these types of question stems are the word like similar, despite, different, as well as the word like. So if you see any of those keywords in a question stem, that's your cue that you are doing a comparison contrast. And then the third type that you'll look at is something called a sequential connection. So this will ask you about like the timing or the chronology or the order that something is occurring within the passage. It could deal with the arrangement. So keywords in this might be a word like first or second or after or following this. So these sequential questions tend to be some of the easier kinds of questions that you'll encounter on this test. Now, on the explicit connection questions, the question stem will ask you for one part of the relationship. It'll provide that for you, and it'll ask you to discover or provide the second part of it. In an explicit connection question, the wording of the correct answer choice will be very similar to the wording that you find in the passage. So like the explicit connections, on implicit connection questions, you're also going to be asked to identify how 2 items are related to each other. But the difference is going to be that in an implicit connection question, it's up to you to discover the relationship. You're not looking for how that's explained in the text. You're asked to generate one. So when you're answering these implicit connection questions, you want to be sure that the answer choice that you're choosing is describing the relationship that's being tested. Is it a cause and effect, or what type is it that's being asked? In your own words, you're going to be putting these answers. So look, this is a good one to practice that strategy where you kind of guess what you think the answer should be before you look at the answer choices. As mentioned earlier in this video, there are questions that deal with vocabulary, but the vocabulary is not can you remember a definition. The vocabulary has to deal with can you determine the meaning of a word based on how it appears in the context of the sentences around it. So vocabulary and context questions ask you to figure out or deduce the meaning of a word or even of a phrase by looking around it. So it pays you to read not just the sentence that the word is appearing in, but the sentences below and past it as well. okay? So for example, if you get a question sent that says, as used in line 7, the word clairvoyant most nearly means, what you want to do is maybe start your reading in line 6 and then continue to line 8 and see within that context if you can discover a clear meaning of what the word clairvoyant might be. Okay, so some strategies you can apply to determining what the correct answer is when you answer vocabulary and context question, try first pretending that the word is a blank in the sentence. So read it as if it's a blank, and then you pretend or you try to predict what word you think would most naturally go there. And then you select the correct answer choice that's closest to that guess. So you're looking for a synonym for the guess. Sometimes you'll be spot on, but this is a way of anticipating the answer and trying to use your own knowledge of words, your own knowledge of context to get to the right answer. Now, following this, as you scroll down this website, what you'll notice is that there's an example of how this context and questions work. So you can see and you can explore this and work on this on your own. So I'm going to flash the QR code that's going to take you to this particular set of questions. Here's the QR code that takes you to that section on the vocabulary and context on the Kaplan website. If you'd like to practice some of these techniques for the connections, questions, and the vocabulary and context, you can go to this mini lesson also at the Kaplan site, and it'll preview you and take you through some of the information that we just went over, but also give you some practice questions to work on as well. So that's it for today. We'll look for you tomorrow as we get to day 9 of the MHS PSAT 10-day challenge. Thanks for watching.